Welcome back to Week 11. Q Assault, where y'all assault me with any sit-start questions you have for fantasy football for this particular week. And as always, doesn't matter what particular week it is, Underdog Fantasy has got y'all covered, cheeked up with a half a yard square, all right? If you are new to the Underdog platform, they are giving you an Aaron Rodgers, 1 single yard. He gets 1 single yard. You put this square in your slip. You are a winner on Underdog. You get it by going to the Underdog app, downloading it, depositing $10 or more with code BDGE, and that slip right there will appear for you. As always, how we doing? What's up, Mikey baby? Pre-liked, pre-tucked. Cade was good. How we doing? What up, JT? Fourth and Tucked, great nickname. Should probably be my my fantasy football team name next year. So, as we've been doing for the last few weeks with the sit starts, we start with my most highly requested flex players on the week, all right? So we're talking about guys that we have got the most sit-start questions from, whether or not I start them. We're going to run through how we feel about each and every one of them for this week. We've got 8 players, 2 running backs, 6 wide receivers. We're going to get into a couple tight ends at the end, Hunter Henry and Tucker Kraft as well, because those were pretty highly suggested. What up, Mr. Influence? And as always, if you do go use that free square that I just threw up on Underdog right there with code BDGE, you will get access to the Big Dog membership, meaning you will be in the Q and Assaults for the remainder of the season, or by going to bdge.co and signing up for the Big Dog membership. So let's just start off the top of the rip here. We've got Cedric Tillman, wide receiver for the Browns. They're coming off the bye. They are in New Orleans. This is a 44-point total here, and as I told y'all last week, we added in the Vegas fantasy projections from the sports books. Those are based on half PPR. Now, obviously, some of these rankings may change a little bit based on your league settings, so just bear with me and use that as discretion. I have Cedric Tillman ranked as my number 1 flex play this week from the questions that you guys asked. Obviously, some of these guys are not going to be actual flex plays. They're more, wide receiver 2s. Maybe even some of y'all need Cedric Tillman as your wide receiver 1, which I think you could do worse. Over the last 3 weeks, since Jameis Winston has taken over, Tillman has finished as the wide receiver 11, the wide receiver 3, and the wide receiver 15. So a top 15 fantasy wide receiver every single week that you just scrapped off the waiver wire. The Browns are throwing a ton right now, and there are a lot of players getting a lot of targets, but Tillman seems to be the top guy getting the most valuable targets near the end zone, down the field, all that good stuff. The Saints defense, who Cleveland is going against, is atrocious. They beat the Falcons last week, but they let up 500 yards of offense, all right? The Saints have allowed the 4th most passing yards per game on the season. They don't have Marshawn Lattimore anymore. They don't have Paulson Adebo. It does look like they'll get the rookie Kool-Aid McKinstry back, but that's not, plugging any holes in the sinking ship here. So I think with Cedric Tillman, this is just one of those, until he gives you a reason not to, which I'm sure is going to happen soon because he's part of the Browns, but I think you just have to trust him, and he's a must-start as a wide receiver too. He has not gone below 9 targets since Jameis Winston has stepped in at QB. So it feels like the floor is high. It feels like the ceiling is high. The matchup is great. Get him into your lineups, people. All right, moving down the list. We do have Davante Adams here at number 2. Davante Adams is an interesting one, right? Because he's obviously the most talented player on this list by a wide margin, but the situation's a little tricky here. They are playing Indianapolis. And it's been ugly out there in New York since they acquired Davante Adams. I do think this matchup in particular lends itself to be a get-right game for the New York Jets passing offense. Indy is allowing the 6th most passing yards per game to opponents, and over the last 3 weeks, they have allowed the 2nd most receiving yards to wide receiver and 3rd most receptions. On the flip side, in the beginning of the year, they were getting torched on the ground by every running back that they went against. But since DeForest Buckner got healthy, since a lot of their defensive players got healthy, they've been much better against the run just overall as a team. So they're not just like a gaping hole in the middle anymore, which I think lends himself to being a little bit more of a pass funnel defense. Now, obviously, Adams and Rodgers just have not clicked, but since coming over to New York, Adams is 4th in the NFL in targets, right? He came over in week 7, so he played week 7, 8, 9, 10. He's got 4 games. Those 4 weeks, he is 4th in the NFL in targets. Only Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, and Calvin Ridley have more targets than him. 39 targets over 4 games. It's nearly 10 targets a game. The targets are there. His target share is massive. That's 6 more targets than Garrett Wilson has gotten that time frame. Their timing is off, though. He's got a bunch of uncharacteristic dropped balls. I think better days are ahead. His catch rate is 52% right now, which is the lowest by far of anyone in that time frame with over 25 targets. And that's despite having a low A dot, right? Like usually your catch rate is low when you're getting really deep targets down the field. And that makes sense because those are harder to just bring in at a high rate. But the A dot, something just, is obviously not clicking here. I do think he is running more than 50% of his routes from the slot, which I think lends itself to easy catches, easy receptions, and this will get right. So I think Adams is a pretty solid wide receiver 2 in the matchup this week with insane volume that he's getting. Moving down the list, that's kind of where I have a tier break. So I have Tillman, I have Devontae Adams as like rock solid wide receiver 2s, pretty much out of the flex range. They are just like in their positional starting range. Then you get to possible flex plays, and I have Audric Estime as my number 3 guy on this list, getting a lot of questions about Estime. I am in on Estime this week. I think he's a top 25 fantasy running back. They're playing against Atlanta, 45-point total. He's not projected very high in the fantasy point total column, which I get it for a platform that scores with half PPR. Of course, he's not going to be looked at as very highly ranked for fantasy. He surpassed Javonte last week, outcarried him 14-1. Atlanta is a very middle-of-the-pack run defense. When I look at Audric Estime, I think one of the hesitations that people have with Audric Estime is the lack of pass-catching ability here. With the way that Sean Payton's offense is set up, they target the running back on first and second downs at a very, very high rate. Like I went back and I'm looking at Javonte's numbers, right? So right now, Courtland Sutton is leading the Broncos in every receiving statistical category, right? Behind him, it's Javonte. Javonte is second on the entire roster in targets, in receptions, and receiving yards. 67% of his targets have come on first or second down. 71% of his receptions have come on first or second down. 61% of his receiving yards have come on first or second down. So with Estime, if he's the early down back, like he's going to see pass catching work just because he's in that role. Now, maybe they don't write up as many screenplays for him, but I still think he's got like a decent floor where like he's playing with house money when it comes to receptions at this point, right? Because you're so expecting him not to do anything through the air. So I think he's going to get padded by 1 to 2 catches a game just for the fact that he's going to be in on first and second downs, and Sean Payton throws the ball to running backs no matter what down it is, right? You don't need to be playing in pass-catching situations in order to be a pass catcher in this offense. So Estime is a dude where I think he'll just kind of back his way into a couple catches a game because he's playing the early downs. I think he has a very good likelihood to get into the end zone this week. I could see like 15 for 60 on the ground, a touchdown, 2 catches for 17 yards or something like that. The other thing with the Falcons, it probably feels weird for them being an underdog, but they're on the road, very tough environment in Denver. The Falcons are down 3 of their top 4 cornerbacks. So we have A.J. Terrell, we have our 1, but besides that, our cornerback 2, 3, 4 are all not playing in this game. We are playing some dudes that we just signed off of practice squads, just signed off the streets this week. So I don't think the Broncos are going to have any trouble moving the ball through the air, which is good for all running backs involved because it's just more opportunities, more game script, more positive game script, probably more scoring opportunities. So big fan of Estime this week. I think if I had him, I'd be really okay with him as my RB2 or my flex. Moving down that, we have Ricky Pearsall as my 4 here versus Seattle. The matchup is fantastic, 48-point total. Now, they have allowed the 7th most fantasy points per game to the running back position. You'll see on the column all the way to the right there, the numbers that are high are actually good. Like when it says 25th, that means they have allowed I don't know why I put it in this way, but it's like backwards. So they're like 25th against fantasy wide receivers, meaning they've allowed the 7th or 8th most points to the wide receiver position. So when you look at like Josh Downs, the Jets have allowed the 2nd fewest fantasy points. So whatever numbers in that right column at the end, just put fewest at the end of it. So like 2nd fewest, 8th fewest, 25th fewest. You know what I'm saying? Ricky Petersteins. So with Ricky Pearsall, he is like the epitome of one of the most difficult situations that we find ourselves in fantasy football. It's like, a player is good and they're in the midst of playing well, right? But you're finding it hard to justify why they'll be good again because the volume just isn't really there. And you look at the situation, Juwan Jennings and George Kittle are both banged up a little bit. Both are expected to play, though. And I think when you look at Pearsall, like on any given day, he's probably the 4th best option in the passing game. Like you have Kittle, you have C-Mac back, you have Juwan Jennings, and then it's Ricky P. But that being said, I don't want to overthink the situation because he's a first-round, like really talented rookie right now. in the second half of the season. That's when these types of guys break out. He's played in 3 games after missing the entire first half of the season. And in those games, each of the following stats have increased on a game-by-game basis. Targets, receiving yards, fantasy points, targets per route run, average depth of target, air yard share, third and fourth down targets. Like, all of those have increased week after week after week. And while he's not seeing a huge target number overall in the offense, he's capable of really big plays, as we saw last week. And yes, he's not like number 1 in terms of targets, but he's running over 70% of the routes in an offense that's number 2 in the NFL in just overall yards per game, only behind Baltimore. And they're 8th in scoring. So like, they're going to get theirs overall as an offense. So it's tough to predict on a week-to-week basis who's going to actually get it. But like, everyone's going to get their turn in the carousel here. Like I said, it's a 48-point over-under. It's the second highest total on the slate. They scored 36 points when they played Seattle in Week 6 already this year. Purdy plays some of his best ball against Seattle. Like, his numbers, I have a split chart in front of me. I realize that you guys don't have it in front of you. But his pass attempts go up. Pass completions are up. Interceptions are down. Passing touchdowns are up. Yards per attempt are all the way up at 9.5. 262 passing yards per game when playing against Seattle. And over the last 5 weeks, Seattle's allowed the second most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. So, again, I really like Ricky. I have Ricky, you'll see, above Najee Harris in this game. The Vegas fantasy point projection is a massive difference. Harris actually has the highest projection of anyone on this list at 13, where Ricky P is down at 6.8. All of that pretty much sinks into this being like a very touchdown-dependent type of scoring in half PPR. If this is full PPR, I feel even better about Ricky P. With Najee Harris, here's what I'll say. Whether or not Jaylen Warren plays makes a big difference to me. I tweeted out these numbers a little bit. Najee Harris banged up his ankle last week a little bit, but practice in full Thursday, should be good to go. Jaylen Warren had a DMP on Thursday, limited practice on Friday. He's questionable for this one, so I don't know if he's going to play or not. Baltimore is an incredibly tough run defense. Like, holy shit. When I looked at the number, I didn't realize, I knew they were good. Like, they're always good, but I didn't realize how fucking good they were. They have not allowed a single running back, not a single running back on the entire season, to run for 55 yards on them. Not one single starting running back. Pacheco had 45. Zamir White, 24. Rico Dowdle, 32. James Cook, 39. Chase Brown, twice, 46 and 42. Austin Eckler, 21. Rashad White, 40. Bucky, 23. Javonte Williams, 42. Nick Chubb was the highest total yardage on the ground for a running back at 52. Took him 16 carries to do it. No running back had more than 52 yards against them on the ground. That is really concerning for a dude like Najee Harris. This could be one of his vintage 21 carries for 60-yard type games. Now, I know a lot of them have got it, not a lot of them, but a few running backs have got it done through the air, right? You had Chase Brown have 9 catches last week. You had 6 catches for Rashad White a few weeks back. You had 4 for Austin Eckler. But other than that, like, those 3 I would consider like pass catching-ish backs. Rashad White, Austin Eckler, Chase Brown. Those are like Jaylen Warren type backs. If Jaylen Warren plays, this is one of like the most difficult matchups, if not the most difficult matchup you could have for a back like Najee Harris. So I am wildly concerned about him. If Jaylen Warren doesn't play, obviously that lifts the floor for Najee Harris. Obviously, you know, he'll probably get, 2-3 dump offs because of that, and that really is important in a PPR setting. Now, the over-under is really high. 48.5 points for Pittsburgh, Baltimore, which is, interesting. Always has the chance of scoring a touchdown on the goal line. I think what might end up really helping Najee Harris over the remainder of the season is that, like, Pittsburgh is not scoring near the goal line, really. What's happening a lot is they are connecting on a lot of deep passes. So Russ keeps, throwing it in the bucket from 20 yards out to Pickens or Mike Williams or whatever, like all the way down the field. Now, with that, a lot of times those balls end up being pass interference. Like, a lot of times, like, Pickens will get a flag. Mike Williams, I'm sure, will start getting flags. So the ball will end up being spotted on the 1-yard line, which falls into Najee. So that is the way that Najee obviously has a big game and gets to 13 points. Like, that's why his Vegas projection is set at 13, because it's like, okay, he'll probably have 60 yards, 70 yards because he's going to touch the ball 20 times. It's going to be really, 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 really tough, inefficient for him to get yardage on those touches. But again, a PI in the end zone puts them on the 1-yard line. Pretty good chance Najee gets in there. So that's the way I'm looking at it. I think his floor, I think everything about Najee this week is screaming stay away. But I realize some of you guys do not have the option or the luxury of not putting him at your lineup. But I felt like it was worth going into giving you more of an explanation of why I would go with a guy like Ricky Pearsall over Najee Harris in PPR, and I hope that makes sense. Moving down the list, we got the next tier: Romeo Doubs at Chicago, number 6, Josh Downs at New York, number 7, and then Brian Thomas Jr. at Detroit, number 8. So we'll start with who did we have there? Romeo Doubs. Yeah, I mean, it's just a tough matchup. Early in the week, we had some weather concerns, but it doesn't seem as serious. Winds 10 to 15 miles per hour, low chance for showers. The Packers are coming off their bye week, so hopefully we're a little bit more healthy, but it does also mean that the other receivers are going to be healthy too. Now, this doesn't affect Doubs as much because he's playing every snap pretty much, regardless of who is healthy. It does add like a limited risk in the fact that, like, okay, anytime Watson is on the field, he's capable, or Wicks is capable of having that like 40, 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown that just ends a drive right there. It puts them into non-passing game script for the remainder of the game because they're scoring points, and then it also ends a drive that might be another 7 plays. It might be another target or 2 for that receiver. So when they're all healthy, yes, Doubs is on the field, but it also, again, adds that risk, that element of these other players being the guys that end up scoring there. The other thing, obviously, is that Chicago's pass defense is incredible. They are like number 1 in EPA per pass. They are top 5 in coverage rating per PFF. They have allowed the second fewest fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position overall. It's a 40.5 point total here. So while I like Doubs going forward, I like this offense and attaching pieces to it. On the road in Chicago, tough pass D, like this is kind of a stay away for a flex spot for me for young Romeo Doubs-Staines. Same thing with Josh Downs, unfortunately. We do have A. Rich coming under center. We do have Michael Pittman back practicing in full. So everything that could go wrong for Downs' outlook this week has gone wrong. We don't really have a great read with like how the targets are going to be distributed with A. Rich or how Downs plays with Anthony Richardson. Like we have 3 games this year where they played together. Week 3, but that was the first week Josh Downs was back, played limited snaps. That was like a 6 to 7 week stretch that he missed with a high ankle sprain. So like I'm not really reading too much into that. We have week 7 where he caught 1 ball for 3 yards. But then we have week 8 where he caught 4 balls for 109 yards and a touchdown and saw a 30+% target share. So there's like positive, there's negative. I'm leaning towards definitely fading Josh Downs this week, unfortunately. Like the Jets defense is bad, but so is Anthony Richardson. And while the Jets defense overall has been bad and disappointing, mainly their run defense is getting torched. Their pass defense, despite not playing well against Arizona last week, is not bad, despite the way people are painting it. They have allowed the second fewest passing yards per game on the season. They're still ranking very high in coverage grade per PFF. They're still ranking very high in EPA per pass and have allowed the single fewest fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. My other concern with that is because their run D is so bad, like the Colts between A-Rich and Jonathan Taylor might run the ball 40 times and throw it 15 to 20 times. So even if Downs does have a 30% target share, that might end up being like 6 targets. So in my opinion, he's a risky, wide receiver 3 flex option for week 11. All right. Moving down to the last player on this list, it's Brian Thomas Jr. And listen, I don't necessarily know that I have a strong take of BTJ down there below Downs or Romeo Doubs. I think one of my concerns, among many with BTJ, is it's clear. I just don't think he's very healthy, I guess, right? Like Mac Jones is starting again, which is a huge problem. He has not seen more than 5 targets in a month. So he had that span, like he started off the year like 4 targets, and then he had like a 3 or 4 game stretch where he was like 8 targets, 9 targets, 9 targets. And then Evan Ingram came back and he hasn't really seen many targets. And that's a problem. I will say though, like it's weird because it's one of those games where I think you could start BTJ, but like you can't watch the game. You're not going to get points until the end of the game, right? They're 13.5 point underdogs in Detroit. 2 touchdown favorites. Probably going to have to throw the ball a lot. Detroit's probably going to be able to run the ball with fucking ease and just chew clock. So there's not a lot of room for error when Jacksonville gets the ball, which is one of the problems here. Detroit, like despite them giving up a lot of yardage to wide receivers, they have the 3rd best coverage grade per PFF, 2nd best EPA per pass rate as well. Again, they let up a shit ton of fantasy points to wide receivers only because there's so much garbage time against them. So I could see BTJ getting a lot of garbage time points. It's kind of funny, like if you look at the formula of how Detroit and Philly have become, they went from having 2 of the worst pass defenses in the NFL last year to, signing 1 free agent, drafting multiple cornerbacks back-to-back, first round, second round. They both went the exact same path, right? It was Terrion Arnold. It was Ennis Rakestraw. They signed Carlton Davis. Philly went with Quinyon Mitchell, went with Cooper DeJean. It feels like all these teams just hit all around and got their guys and went from one of the worst pass defenses to some of the best. And obviously, Detroit has great safety play from Brian Branch and Corey Joseph and, et cetera. But I feel like they're laying out a new formula for how passing defenses can completely reform themselves. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington ends up going down the same path there, where we see the Commanders use their two of their first 3 picks on cornerbacks or something like that. But we're seeing it play out in real time here, which is kind of fun to watch because I liked all those prospects coming out, which is cool. So BTJ, yeah, I think you could put him in your lineup as a wide receiver 3. I just would not watch this game hoping for anything consistent or anything fun to happen. But I think by the end of the game, you'll be like, okay, cool. He got me 8, 9, 11 points or something like that. And as promised, I jump into a couple tight ends that I saw a lot of questions about. I think one of the most popular questions I got was just Tucker Kraft versus Hunter Henry. So Hunter Henry is coming off a really bad game, 1 catch for 14 yards. They beat the Bears 19-3. They didn't have to throw the ball. Drake May threw the ball 25 times, which is 8 fewer passes than he's had in any start this year. The Bears also have an extremely tough pass defense, who Tucker Kraft now has to play this week. And prior to this game, where they didn't need to throw the ball, Henry's had 12.6 points, 9.5, 17.2, and 13.1 points. And they play the Rams. That should be an over game. I love the over in this game. The Rams have allowed the 9th most fantasy points to tight ends on the year. They allowed big games to Laporta, McBride, Tucker Kraft, Brock Bowers. All had good games against them. I don't hate Tucker Kraft just because, again, I like being attached to the Packers offense, but this is one of them with the tougher matchups to really pull it off. Tough defense in Chicago, tough environment, all that kind of shit. So I go Hunter Henry over Tucker Kraft there. Sheesh. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful. Let's get to some of the sit starts in thy chat. We have CJ Stroud or Purdy. Yep, I like Purdy. Kind of explain that a little bit. He plays his best ball against Seattle. I don't think in their last 7 or 8 matchups, San Fran has scored fewer than 27 points. Pick one, full PPR. Knox, Firemouth, Jonnu, or Disley. Ooh, honestly, a lot of good options there. I like Dawson Knox filling in for Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, so the target share is even less distributed around. We have Pat's probably not going to be my guy here. I just don't feel like we have any upside with Pat. We do have some upside with Jonnu Smith because he's making plays here for the Dolphins. Who do they play? Why can I not find the fucking Dolphins? Dolphins play the Raiders. That's a good matchup. Or Disley. I think I'm going to go with Dawson Knox. I think they're going to have to throw the ball. I like Knox or Disley, actually, because I think the offenses, respectively, are going to have to throw the ball out. I think Miami's going to end up playing bully ball and just running the ball a shitload of times in this one. Start one PPR, Tillman or Waddle. While I like the matchup for Waddle, it's going to be Tillman for me. In a separate trade, not yet complete, would you trade Kupp for London? Yeah, they're pretty even for me, but I think London's playoff schedule is immaculate. I want to say it's like the Panthers, Raiders, and Commanders or something like that. Was this a good trade for me? I received Chuba. I traded away Sutton, Stroud, and Algier. Yeah, in a one QB league, that's pretty much Sutton for Hubbard. So, I mean, while Sutton's been obviously performing really, really highly, if I have one player that I'm going to have more confidence in going forward, it's Chuba. Trying to trade for London. RBs are Saquon, Brees, Demont, Tyrone. God damn, Bucky. Wide receivers are Kupp, Debo, JSN, BTJ. Would you rather move Monty and JSN or Tyrone and JSN? You to go, King. Ooh, good question there. I think both of them are valid. I would do either one, to be honest. I think I might lean actually moving Monty. Tyrone, his opportunity share, his explosiveness it's been incredible. I feel about as good as Tyrone Tracy in fantasy as almost any running back, which is ridiculous to say, but I'm fine with either trade. I don't think one has a huge advantage over the other. If it's PPR, I might lean keeping Tracy. Marcy Baby, Devontae Adams, Darnell Mooney, Zay Flowers, T. Higgins, and Tillman. Play 2, full PPR. Does the answer change if Adams is out hurt? Adams, I believe, is playing. Zay is going to be a start for me for sure. Love Zay. Very high total here again, 48.5. And then it's close. I'm probably going to sit Darnell Mooney just because the matchup is horrendous. I think London probably sees a lot of Surtain, but I don't know if he shadows. I think Mooney will see his fair share as well. So I'm going to go Zay Flowers and that's tough between the other three. I don't know if I trust Higgins coming off the multi-week injury, so I might sit him in the tough matchup. And then it's Tillman versus Adams, and I pretty much did my rankings early in this video, and I had Tillman above Adams, but they're in the same tier for me, so I don't have a super strong lean one way or the other, but those are probably my two favorite. Mo Bay, full point PPR. 2 questions. Start Dawson Knox, Taysom Hill, Hunter Henry. Start wide receiver Christian Watson, Kayshon Boutte, Ray McLeod, Demarcus Robinson. Please help me not get too cute. Okay, so we have a tight end between Knox and Hill and Hunter Henry. Yeah, I'm going to go Hunter Henry. I think all 3 options are pretty good, to be honest. Like, Hill should be super involved with Jamal Williams out again and all their pass catchers out again. I think he's a really strong start, but I really just like the chemistry we've seen with Henry and Drake May, especially in games where, like, it's not like really tough defensive matchups. I feel like this Patriots-Rams game is going to be a really fun one. And again, I'm nailing the over on this one. If you want to track all my bets, you could do that on Pickett. It's literally a sports bet tracking app. Like, it's a social bet tracking app where you could follow my profile. Like, there's a link down below in the description of this video. And if you click it, it'll automatically bring you to my profile. If you put the code BDGE in, it'll be like, who sent you? BDGE. Free to download, free to join, free to follow, all that stuff. It'll show you all the bets I make for this week. And I put the over of Rams Patriots already in there. So I just like the matchup a lot. I think May and Henry have been really, really good in good matchups. So I'm going to go Henry there. You have Watson versus Chicago. Don't love that. You have, again, New England pass catcher. I might split the difference there just because I don't love investing heavily into an offense that I don't know is going to really blow up. Ray's got a really tough matchup against Denver. Demarcus Robinson now does play New England. So you have a bunch of wide receiver 3s pretty much. I think Boutte's been actually kind of good recently. 6 targets in 3 straight games. I don't feel like any of them have a floor, to be honest with you. And I do kind of feel like Demarcus Robinson probably has the highest ceiling just in terms of game environment and just play style. Watson, I hate the game environment. I like Watson a little bit more as a player, but they just have not connected, and I don't love that. But it would be very close between Watson and Demarcus Robinson for me. I think if it's my lineup, I'm probably going to settle on Robinson, but I would not blame you for going Watson if you wanted to lean there. Have PPR Dowdle or Dobbs. I'm going to go Dowdle there. I just feel a lot more comfortable with his role. Pick 2. Half PPR Mooney, Ridley, D-Hop, Juan, Shakir. Played Saquon, need highest ceiling. Ooh, he played against Saquon. So we're definitely going Shakir here. Love the possible shootout aspect in Buffalo. No Keon Coleman, no Dalton Kincaid. I think Shakir has an absolute pop day. You have Mooney against Denver, tough matchup. You've got Ridley, who's been seeing a fuckload of targets, but they play Minnesota, and I kind of feel like Will Levis is going to shit himself in that backfield against the blitz from the Vikings, so I don't love that. You can run it back with D-Hop and just hope this game ends up going into like the 50s of a total, but ultimately I kind of think I like Juwan Jennings the most out of these matchups. I think I might go Juwan Jennings and Shakir there. But I will say, like, if you really feel like you need crazy upside, highest ceiling, I think there's a world where, like, D-Hop probably has the most likely outcome to score 2 touchdowns. Or if this runs back, like, if everything runs pure for you, again, this becomes a shootout between Buffalo and Kansas City, and it's a lot of Shakir, it's a lot of D-Hop there. So if you want to play some strategy there, some game strategy, I could see us going that direction as well. D-Hop, Shakir. But ultimately, like, in a raw vacuum, I really like Juwan Jennings this week. Full PPR, start Jameson Williams or Njigba. Okay, so we have Njigba. Becomes a tough start, obviously, because DK Metcalf is back in the lineup. And, like, JSN had they had 7 games together, and JSN had, I think, 1 good game with DK Metcalf in the lineup. Like 1 game over 50 receiving yards. That's not great. J-Mo, on the other hand, is like exactly the way people talk about J-Mo. He is high ceiling, low floor. Ultimately, I think I would lean Jameson Williams, man. Full point PPR, flex BTJ, Ridley, or DeAndre Hopkins. So BTJ would be my third option there. I like D-Hop. I like Ridley both. I think I'm just going to play the matchup here. The matchup and the game total and go D-Hop there. On waiver for play this week only. Tight end, who should I pick up? Henry, Ferguson, or Schultz with this matchup? Yeah, I'm going Henry there again. As you guys can see, most of the players I like are most of the questions with Hunter Henry end up leaning towards him. So we have half PPR, 2 flex. Najee, Mostert, Quentin Johnston, Pop Douglas. Okay, so we're definitely not playing Mostert after not getting any carries last week. Najee, I already kind of laid the case for why I don't like him. Quentin Johnston might actually be my number 1 in this question, so he would be in there because the matchup is so good, and he just keeps getting it done one way or the other. So I'll go Quentin as 1, and then between Najee and Pop Douglas, because it's half PPR, if Jalen Warren doesn't play, it's easily Najee for me. If Jalen Warren does play, it becomes much closer between the two, of course. But I still think Najee probably has a better likelihood of getting 60 yards. I think he has a better likelihood of scoring a touchdown. So I'd lean him. I'd go Najee and Johnston there. Matthew, full PPR, Superflex, Tillman or Ladd, Tua or A-Rich. Oh, let's go. We got some fucking A-Rich propaganda going. Now, Tillman and Ladd. Wow, I love both of those. I think I'm going to go Tillman. For the first one, and then Tua or A-Rich. So Tua plays LLV. A-Rich plays New York. That's not a great matchup. I kind of want to just roll with A-Rich for the plot. Like I'm in a super flex league where I'm starting A-Rich this week. So fuck Anthony, roll with me. Matthew Anthony, fucking roll with me. Let's go A-Rich. This is his bounce back game. He learned. He grew up. Start 2, full PPR. Pollard, Ridley, Devontae Adams, Khalil Shakir. Also, 1 quarterback, love Russell Wilson. Thanks for all the help, big dog. I got you, Dixon. So we need to start 2, full PPR. Shakir is my 1 there. And I'm going to roll. Pollard's got a tough matchup against Minnesota. You got both Titans players, obviously. That becomes tough. Pollard is kind of splitting snaps with Tajay Spears again. I'm going to roll with the 2 bottom wide receivers. I'm going to go Adams in a good matchup and Khalil Shakir in a good matchup. Also, 1 quarterback. We got Jordan Love at Chicago, Russell Wilson. Ooh, I'm going Russ. The Baltimore Ravens pass defense is insanely bad right now. And I believe they're going to be without Kyle Hamilton. Let me actually get a practice report update if we do have that. Okay, that's a lie. He DNP'd on Wednesday, limited on Thursday, full practice on Friday. So he's probably going to play. That would have been a huge upgrade to the Pittsburgh offense, obviously. I'm still going to go Russ, though, because everything on paper feels like it pushes towards him. The over-under is up at 48.5. Like, he's just been playing really well. So I'll go Russ there. Bo Nix or Russell Wilson? That shit gets a little more interesting against the Falcons. I think I'm going to lean Bo Nix there. Half PPR, Andrews versus Pitt or Kraft for Chicago. I'm going Andrews there. Ride the hot hand. Trade Hawkinson and Jigba for Mike Evans. My other receivers are A.J. Brown and Devontae Adams. Yeah, I'm fine with it. Got no problem getting off of JSN now that DK is back. Start 1 this week, JSN or BTJ, PPR. Yeah, there's probably where I jump the line on JSN. If it's my team, I'm probably going JSN. There's just too many bad unknown variables out there in Jacksonville. He's hurt, quarterback, bad matchup, like all the above. Enough. Full PPR, Debo or CD? Oh God. Debo. Full sending A-Rich, same league. Would you start Ladd over T? Let's go. No, I would. I'm playing T this week. With the trade deadline approaching, what are your favorite buys? Off the top of my head, I don't know if I have a bunch off the top of my head. We've done a few videos throughout the year that were targeting best playoff matchups. And one thing that I would be like really, really conscious of is trading for or trading away dudes with their bye weeks already in the chamber. In our Your Idiot League Mates league, Tony just traded Kamara for DeAndre Swift and Tyreek Hill, which was a really good get, obviously. He got two solid pieces. Now, Swift has a tough playoff schedule down the stretch, and Tyreek Hill, who knows what he's actually going to be. But Kamara has his bye next week, whereas the other two don't have byes yet. And when you have 3 games left and every fucking game matters, like getting those star players in your lineup could be the difference between you making the playoffs and going further as well. So I might try to move off of big name players that have their bye still approaching if you're like in the midst of a really tight playoff schedule. So I would maybe look ahead at teams that still have their bye and see if you can get off players. There's actually still a lot of teams with byes. So next week, week 12, we got the Falcons, Bills, Bengals, Saints, Jets, and Jaguars. And then I think week 14 is another big bye week. What the fuck is the NFL doing putting 6 teams on bye in week 14? Broncos, Colts, Patriots, Commanders, Ravens, Texans. So maybe some teams in those veins, I would be looking to see if I could like split the difference, do something that Tony did there, where it's like you're giving up probably the best player in the trade, but is he really the best player if you only get to use him, 2 out of the next 3 weeks type beat? QJ or D-Hop? Why is this hard? Why is this close? Yeah, I'm probably playing D-Hop there. But I think it's close. I think it's worth thinking about. How would you rank these for half PPR? CD, Reed, Stevenstein. Reed, despite the matchup, Reed's probably my 1. Stevenstein, I'm assuming we mean Ramondre. You know what? What's the Rams' run defense been up to? Like, I know their D line's been great with Verse and Brandon Fisk coming in, but are they stopping the run? What's their run grade? Okay, they're kind of top 12. Number 12 in fantasy points per game allowed to the running back, 16 in EPA per rush rank, 14th in run D rank per PFF. So they're on the better side of top half here. So they're not an easy matchup, but I do think I like the matchup enough for the Patriots offense that I think they'll move the ball with Drake May. So where'd you rank these rap papers? So I'm actually going to sit CD here, as much as that hurts. Full PPR. Trade Brees for James Cook and TJ Hawkinson. My other running backs are Hunt, Pacheco, Hubbard, and Dowdle. My tight ends are Hunter Henry and Ferguson. Hawkinson's obviously looked like a stud. James Cook is cool too. Let me look at the ongoing schedules. So the Jets I know have not had their bye week yet. The Buffalo has not had their bye week yet either. Minnesota has. So TJ you're getting for the rest of the season. You're going to miss a week with both running backs either way. Buffalo gets San Fran after they get KC now. They get San Fran after the bye. Then they get Detroit, New England, New York. So that's actually week 16 and 17 is a really nice playoff schedule for James Cook. New York, on the other hand, gets Indy this week. Then they have their bye. But then they have Jacksonville, the Rams, Buffalo in the fantasy playoffs. That's not really that big of a deal either way. It's really hard to get a grip on Breece Hall. It feels like all his fucking value is so hypothetical at this point. He's not actually getting anything done. Obviously going to take Breece over Cook rest of season. I don't know that Hawkinson is like someone I'm coveting over Hunter Henry, but I think it's a good trade. I think it's fine. I think I would be okay with it if you wanted to do that. Because you're missing both of those running backs next week regardless. But Hubbard's is such a good RB2. Hunt will probably be cooked once Pacheco is back. The thing you got to hope for is that Pacheco doesn't ruin it for both of them. You got to hope he's not a fucking just absolute house ruiner here. Kicker streamers this week. I have not taken 1 second out of this entire fantasy season to think about kickers. We don't do kickers in our ranks. I don't ever answer kicker questions. I don't make kicker content. So I have no idea who's even good anymore. I just try to attach myself to good offenses. That's the way I look at the over-under for games, and I say, hey, is this kicker in a game that has a 48-point over-under? Let me get a piece of that ass. Or maybe that's not even the way to look at it. Maybe you just want teams that can't score because they get stopped in the red zone. Half PPR, Schultz or Disley. Appreciate you, big dog. I'm going Disley here. So I sent that trade about JSN and Monty Tyrone for London earlier. PPR, would you trade JSN plus Monty or Tyrone or 1-for-1 Brees for... Wait. Would you that trade... Oh, would I prefer that trade over Brees for London? I probably prefer the 2-for-1, though I don't think that Brees should be valued that much more highly than Monty or Tracy. Detroit has not had their, or Detroit's already had their bye. New York is in their bye week right now. So if you can, I mean, I guess if you could do that now, you're eating a bye week. But like, I don't hate the idea of trading off of Brees for London. Trading off Brees for London because London's playoff schedule is so good. LV, New York, Washington. They do get their bye in week 12, so that's kind of tough. But I don't hate that, I guess. I'm trying to think what would I do if this was actually my situation. PPR does make me lean getting rid of Monty over these other two. Montgomery's got probably like 2 catches on the fucking year. Top 3 cones in the NFL fantasy space. Honestly, there's too many to fucking name. Everybody's a cone out here. Everybody's just saying the same shit over and over again. I'm going to go J-Mo, Gut, and Pretty Ricky. Thank you for all you do, Big Dog, Mr. Influence. No, thank you for supporting. I love y'all. Thank you guys for hanging out. I know these Saturdays are kind of fun because it's a little more intimate. You know, there's only literally 11 people in here, which is cool. So if you want to be one of the 11 next week, or you can make number 12, we can make a top 12 out here. I can rank y'all. So we got RB1s, wide receiver 1s, and fucking Big Dog 1s. See who ranks 1 to 12 here. So we will leave you with that. And as I said earlier, this free square for Aaron Rodgers this weekend is up. 1 passing yard. You win on Underdog. Use code BDGE when you deposit on there. We'll get that to you. That'll also get you access to the Big Dog membership, which gets you into Q and Assault. If you're already on Underdog, you could sign up to be a Big Dog member at bdge.co. All right. I love y'all. I'm out. Smoke cheese.